Welcome to Pittsford, New York, home of a small technology company called Vnomics. They've developed a fuel-saving technology called TrueFuel that encourages drivers to be more fuel efficient rather than limiting the driver's options and taking away control of the vehicle. Hi, I'm Jim Park. Stay with me for the next few minutes and you'll see why coaxing is much better than coercion when it comes to fuel-efficient driving. The onboard hardware portion of the TrueFuel system is a sophisticated data collector that processes sensor data from the powertrain. It provides the driver with immediate feedback and generates reports that can be used by the fleet for training and monitoring. It can be installed by just about anyone in less than 15 minutes. Each of the onboard units is calibrated for the truck it's installed in. It has all the fuel maps and specs for the truck, including gear ratios, horsepower, torque, all that kind of stuff. Layered over that are the environmental parameters that the system uses to determine if the engine is being operated as efficiently as possible. The system knows if the truck is empty or loaded, on flat ground or on a hill. The system doesn't use fuel consumed as a driver rating parameter. Instead, it measures potential fuel economy, where you're operating on the fuel map, and how close you can come to using the least amount of fuel possible to generate the needed power. This immediately deflates any concerns drivers might have about fleet fuel economy rankings being unfair because they're subject to external influences like weight or terrain. TrueFuel shows only whether or not the driver is operating the truck properly. Let's get out there and give it a whirl.
Another right at the end.
Oh, this is embarrassing. Off to a rocky start, but that's just me being a little stale in my shifting. Joining me in the truck are Ed Johannes, a Vnomics Customer Success Manager, and Sales Engineer Ben Stevens.
So basically, because of the horsepower and torque of this engine, the vehicle parameters that are set for this exact vehicle are about 1,000 or what, 1450?
Yeah.
That's probably the sweet spot for this engine for, maximum horsepower and torque while still being efficient. So anytime you go out, you're actually going to go right. When you go outside of that range, you're going to hear this audible shifting tone. As soon as you shift, it goes off, or it will stay on for if you decide you don't want to shift, it'll stay on, and you'll see that. So really, just rev it up. I'll let Ed.
Yeah, just drive like you stole it.
So the way this system's set up to operate is it understands various engine and gearing parameters and how fast the engine should be going for each shift. I'm going to deliberately take it higher than I should. And you hear that annoying little tone. It's actually not very annoying, but it reminds you every time you've taken the engine RPM a little higher than you needed to. So if that was happening to you all day long, at some point you'd get the message that maybe you need to modify your driving behavior. And that's the whole point of this system, is it doesn't take away the throttle if you need it. But each time that little warning buzzer comes on, it tells you, hey driver, you don't need to be revving the engine quite that high. Maybe it's time to grab another gear. So at some point, you're going to get used to that and sort of start shifting properly. That's the sort of progressive learning ability of this system. And of course, if you continue to ignore it and you get the beeps, then your overall fuel economy scores that the company's going to see will reflect that. Just for the record, this is the bad Jim driving. It's really painful for me to drive like this. I never rev engines this high as a matter of course, but for the purposes of our demonstration here, I have to set a baseline for the bad Jim score so that when I go back and get my remedial training and come out and do the second part of our test drive, I'll be driving properly, and hopefully that chime won't be going off as often as it is right now. So I've just pulled in and brought this thing to a stop, and I'm going to check my shift score. When I turn the truck off, the Vnomics unit, the TrueFuel unit, is going to say a number. Closer I get to 100, the better I am. Bear in mind I'm being the bad Jim on this test drive, so I'm not expecting miracles, but we'll set the brake, turn off the key, and in just a second, we'll hear how well I did.
Your score is 46.
46. Ooh, I guess I'd be getting a letter when I got back to the terminal. So every time the driver ends a shift, gets out of the truck and turns the key off, he or she gets that immediate feedback from the system. Not a letter in your mailbox a week later, but you get nearly instant reinforcement that you've just done really well or really poorly in this case. Now, again, I'll remind you, this was bad Jim driving and I was trying to do badly, so I guess I succeeded. Anyway, we're going to switch all this around in a few minutes and we're going to get into the same truck, but we're going to refresh the system and I'm going to drive it properly and we'll see if I can do any better than 46. So that was the bad Jim run, where I intentionally over-revved the engine and even exceeded the preset 55-mile-an-hour speed limit a couple of times. According to the report, the potential fuel mileage could have been 7.24 miles per gallon, but I managed only 6.87. I wasted 2.7 gallons of fuel by shifting badly in our 45-minute test run. The blue lines represent how often I went over the 1500 RPM threshold. In part 2, Good Jim takes the wheel. Check that one out to see what a difference a few hundred RPM can make. For Today's Trucking and Heavy Duty Trucking, I'm Jim Park at Vnomics in Pittsford, New York.